Hello, I'm Dahlia,
And I'm Allie.
and welcome to Navigate the Now.
Welcome. Today we have another super special guest, Vicky Forrest. Welcome, Vicky.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you for coming on. We so appreciate you, and we're going to get into how we know you. I don't want to jump into it too quick and what makes you coming on so special, but we're so thankful you're here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And a little intro on Vicky. Vicky was born and raised in Springfield, Ohio. She was raised by her mother as a middle child and the only girl. Vicky raised her family and worked in Springfield most of her life. She attended Urbana University, where she studied literature and social sciences. Vicky worked in radio news for over 15 years, covering regional news in the Columbus, Dayton, and Greater Springfield area as a reporter and anchor. She covered the rallies and press conferences of Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, and still has her press badge from 1973. She then worked in public relations and communications, where upon retirement she began her dream job as a journalist for the Springfield News and Sun. Vicky worked at the Springfield News and Sun for 3 years. Welcome, Vicky, again.
Yeah, welcome again.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, Vicky, with all our guests, we have our community agreement, so I'm going to read them off,
Okay.
and then you let me know if you agree with them, and also if there's anything you'd like to add. So we'll start off with community agreement number 1, speaking in draft. It doesn't have to be a polished thought. Number 2, assume everyone is doing their best. Remember, most people have good intentions. Number 3, not here to be right, but to get it right. 4, be present, active listening. 5, be mindful of speaking space, how much time we're taking up. 6, listen to understand instead of listening to respond. 7, this is space to learn and grow. 8, don't yuck my yum. 9, be boundless and limitless. And 10, have fun. So what do you think about those?
Sounds great to me.
All right, excellent. Anything you would like to add?
Nothing comes to mind.
Okay.
All right.
And our first question, we are going to just go straight into, Allie, tell me how you know Vicky.
How do I know Vicky? My freshman year, I ended up going to a local high school, Green Inn, and there was someone in my class named Ben. And we became friends. We both played soccer. We had mutual friends, a lot of mutual friends. And there's probably I won't tell any stories. We've got some good stories, but I won't out you, Ben. So I've known Ben for a long time, and Vicky
Maybe we'll talk later, Allie.
Yeah. Offline. And Ben and I, we took a lot of classes together. And Vicky, you are Ben's mother.
I am Ben's mother,
Yes. Yes.
whether he likes it or not.
Whether he likes it or not. Ben and I, fun fact, we took Spanish 3 together in high school, and we made a paper mache piñata of a globe, and it was shaped like an egg. There's a photo of it. And I
Spanish
think
grade? Does Ben
Spanish
speak
3.
Spanish then? Maybe a little bit?
Yeah, he knows more than I bet he'll let on. Yeah. And then, I was thinking just now, I think Ben, we all went to a dance together, like a big group of us, maybe even, I don't know, sometime around that time. But we've had a lot of good memories. Ben and I have gone on a cross-country trip together with my own husband, not to be confused, but also named Ben, where he brought his camper van. So we've had a lot of good memories. But then most recently, you introduced us to Beth Macy, who is also a friend of yours through journalism, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. Beth is a spectacular journalist.
Yeah. And we know you're a journalist as well, and that is ultimately why you're here today, because you, in retirement, you got your dream job as a journalist, but you signed on at the Springfield News and Sun at probably one of, I mean, I don't know if that's too much to say, but probably one of the most momentous times Springfield has seen in recent history.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I first started doing it, everything was pretty normal, just covering things like road repairs and what roads were going to be closed for repairs, in a time frame, and just your typical kind of small town kind of activities. It was, utility prices going up and that kind of stuff. And then that suddenly changed, and it was a couple of years of really crazy city commission meetings.
Yeah, and for full context, I wasn't living here yet. I had moved away for over 15 years, living in good old Tampa, and then I came back in the fall of 23, where I think things really got heightened, and we're going to get into that. But yeah, the last couple years, it's really gotten crazy, and you were experienced and were at a lot of the town halls, which we've seen on national news, reporting on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where to go. It's like, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yep. And it's still, it's a story that's still unfolding. That's the other thing. It's currently, there are protests still going on, trying to ensure that the Haitian immigrants that came here and established lives here are able to stay. And we're under a temporary lift of the mandatory deportation. We don't know how that's going to play out. So it's still a very, very topical discussion, even after 2 years of very intense communication between the city leadership and the residents of the community, and much of it very fraught and a lot of anger.
Yeah, and just to give, if you're not living here currently, you might not be as cued in, but as of last Monday, temporary status protection for Haitians was granted an extension, which it was unsure. And so there was an anticipation, basically, that essentially that everyone, the ICE agents from Minnesota, the Department of Homeland Security, was then going to descend upon Springfield to detain potentially up to, 15,000 immigrants we currently have living here right now. I'm not sure if that's the exact number, but
nobody's sure of the exact number.
Yeah.
And it's
Roughly.
subject to change, definitely
Yeah.
subject to change these days.
Yeah, we can go back and check. But so there's just, it's been in a really heightened state. The court case is pending. They expect it to appeal. So we're going to get back into that. But just to give everybody kind of a preface why you're here and why it is so timely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just want to jump in real quick because we're talking about last Monday. So depending on when this episode airs, today we're recording
Yes.
February the 8th. And so it was February, was it then the 2nd then?
It was the 4th that
The 4th, okay.
the deportations were supposed to start because it would have expired at midnight on the 3rd. But then we got a reprieve because we got a ruling from an appellate judge that extended the TPS under which these folks are residing here.
Got it. Yes. All right. Well, thank you for that clarification. And so,
Yeah.
I know that is what is super timely. And before we get into the details of all that and local journalism, can you tell us a little bit about how you even became interested? Maybe tell us a little bit about your story of what drew you to journalism. How old were you when you knew you wanted to do it?
It was a great time when I was growing up, and I was in high school when the whole Watergate thing happened, and I watched journalists topple a president, kind of, and the importance of journalism at that point in time made a serious impression on me, and I wanted to become a journalist. I just thought I loved writing. And I thought that would be my dream job. So I talked to my guidance counselor about it, and she said, "Oh, journalism's a really hard field for a woman to get into. Why don't you be a teacher instead?" So I didn't take that advice.
Yeah. Well, that's to think about somebody saying that, it just makes my blood boil.
Well,
what?
it was the beginning of the women's movement at that time. There were barely women in journalism. They were just starting to appear on television. It was really still kind of a new career for women to be able to pursue.
Well, I'm glad you didn't listen to her and you followed your heart.
Yeah.
And you followed your talents.
Well, it worked out. It worked out that I did get my first job in journalism after I finished college, and that was with a local Springfield radio station, and started doing radio news there. So I had a good period of time doing radio news, and I worked in Springfield, and then went to Dayton, and then to Columbus. In that period of time, a lot of very interesting things to cover as a journalist, and I was also an anchor. And I also did, for a while, a 1-hour talk show, call-in talk show in Springfield.
No way.
Yeah.
Ooh.
People called in and like asked questions, or like,
Yes.
what was that?
It was that people would call in and ask questions, and when I started doing it, I prompted my mom, you have to call in and ask questions. So I would be guaranteed to have at least one phone call.
That's so fun.
So, but I covered the Dayton teacher strike when I was working in Dayton, and I would report on local news as an anchor, and one time I got to report on the shooting death of a former high school boyfriend who got into a fight over a pitcher of beer.
Wow.
So there were some interesting times, but it was fun, and I enjoyed it. And then there came a point where, after jumping from Springfield to Dayton and then to Columbus, I realized that one of the things that I didn't like being in radio news at the time was the non-compete contracts that they had everyone under, which really required you to leave whatever community you were in, because you would have a prohibition that prohibited you from taking a job within 60 miles of the current radio station that you were working in for a year. You couldn't work at any of the stations that aired in the same area. So you really had to be willing to move a lot if you were going to advance the career. And I decided I didn't want to keep moving. So I ended up moving into different areas of communication. And I don't know if those still exist. I don't know if non-compete contracts still exist or not, but that was one of the things that I didn't like. I thought was very unfair that people couldn't, get a better offer across town and take that opportunity.
Yeah. So, and it's not that you're working at both places at the same time. It was like leaving one place, and then for like a year afterwards, you couldn't work in that same area?
In that same area. Absolutely right.
Jeez Louise, yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder how that applies to the local news stations on TV now. Maybe that, I wonder if that applies.
Oh yeah, it always applied to TV news too. Now I don't know that they had it for print. I never really had that conversation with anybody about that, but yeah, TV and radio were both under the same contracts that prohibited them from jumping across town. So yeah, that's one of those little known facts about the radio biz.
Yeah. Okay. And I know you're also a mom and a grandma.
Yes, I am.
And a wife. You have a lot of hats.
I do. I do. And it's all of them are pretty fulfilling.
Yeah. And a cat mom.
And a cat mom. Yes.
We're all cat moms on today. So.
Maybe
Another
the most important
common
hat
thread.
that you wear is the cat mom.
Yeah.
That's right. The cat mom community.
Yeah.
Okay. And aside from the ex-boyfriend bar fight,
Yeah.
was there any other memorable, what's a favorite or one of your fondest memories of something you reported on or instance that really kind of sticks with you?
I remember, and this is one of the things too about local radio back in the day. When I worked in Dayton, it was interestingly it was an AM and FM combo station, and the FM station was a Black-oriented format, which played all that great music from the 70s that Black artists were performing. And then on the other side, on the AM side, it was a right-wing radio talk. an interesting environment to work in. But one of the things that at that point in time, that was one of those where they had probably 6 reporters that were there reporting locally as well as anchoring and covering the area, the greater Dayton area. And, people would go to cover city commission meetings as well as school board meetings and the county commission meeting. And you would have dedicated reporters from radio itself doing that, along with the reporters that you would have from the press. And the press at that point in time was robust. We had, there were major, in Dayton papers, as well as, in Columbus, you have the Dispatch, and they had a huge staff of journalists that were dedicated to covering local news. And all of that has pretty much gone away, which is, I think, really unfortunate and is part of the real problem that we have increasingly with news deserts that exist across the country.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain a little bit more what a news desert is?
Yes.
Well, there are more of them every day in the United States where there is no local news coverage unless you're lucky enough to have an NPR station or a public radio station or a public TV station that is dedicating resources to it, because they do serve like rural areas that have never been well served by a lot of the media, because they've always been centered in major or larger urban and metropolitan areas. The thing is that now all of those stations, the TV stations and the radio stations located in major urban and metropolitan areas, are corporate owned by massive companies. A lot of them, in fact, are like, I'll give an example. The Cox Group in Dayton, Ohio, it started out with 2 newspapers there, and one of those died probably in the 70s. But and they also had 2 radio stations and a major television station there. All of those outlets are now owned by people outside of Dayton. In fact, the TV and radio stations ended up being owned by a private equity organization, and they just wring out all the money that they can from it, and they don't do much local coverage. I mean, minimal compared to what used to be the case. And that, we've all seen too what has happened with newspapers, and I saved some data on this. Since 2005, more than 3,200 print newspapers have vanished. They disappear at a rate of more than 2 per week in the past year, and there are now fewer than 100,000 people employed in the newspaper industry overall across the United States. In 20 states, including Ohio, there are fewer than 1,000 newspaper employees remaining. So it's really been gutted over the years by corporations that have taken over all the media. And very, very much limited the amount of news and information people are getting locally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, Vicky, some people will say, well, of course there's no more newspaper. Like, we're all online now. Like, let's get with the times. Can you tell us a little bit about why it is important to have local news?
Well, first of all, if you don't have local news, how are you going to know when your elected people are not really serving the public, but serving themselves? How are you going to know when there's misappropriations of funds? How are you? Nobody's going to tell you.
Nobody's looking into it, right? If they don't have local journalists.
Right. I mean, and there's no accountability. If there's no local journalism, there's no accountability. And that's a huge thing. And then the other thing is, while yes, we have all the internet options available to us, that's also been given rise to all of the misinformation that's rapidly spread online. And anybody who wants to know whether they're getting accurate information has to do a lot of research and evaluate a lot of the resources to determine exactly whether they're trustworthy or not. And I don't think a lot of people are really going through that process.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely don't think so, especially now with the rise in news influencers.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's just a whole nother thread of destruction of information, which is also leading to the destruction of democracy. The two go hand in hand. If you don't have trusted information to make decisions on, then you don't have a democracy anymore.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's pretty cheery, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely going to hit multiple speed bumps, I'll call them, because yeah.
Oh, I got one that I'll give you as a bridging thing for a minute. That's just the company that ended up taking over. I mentioned that it was a big private equity firm that took over the Cox Media outlets, and its name is Apollo Global Management, and it's a private equity firm. And the former CEO was fired when his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was discovered.
Oh, what?
See how easy it is to tie Jeffrey Epstein into anything?
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that was an interesting thing.
Another evil force trying to take over the world, it feels like.
Exactly. And successfully doing a lot of it and dominating every news coverage outlet in the world.
Right.
Right now.
And so I know that was kind of how you got connected to Beth Macy, if I'm correct.
Yes.
She's kind of been diving into that as well. I didn't know if you wanted to
Yes.
speak on kind of both of your work or as it connects.
Well, I met Beth. Beth Macy is the author of Dope Sick. And
yes.
when I was working at the News Sun, she came in town to promote her new book, which was a follow-up to Dope Sick. And she did a town meeting there with people coming in and asking her questions. And then she granted me an interview following her presentation, and we had a lovely discussion, and both had similar backgrounds in terms of, going to college under financial aid and benefiting from all of the assistance that was available to students then, and being able to launch into careers in journalism straight out of college. And so we agreed, that she said she was working on another book, and it had to do with some of the local issues that were, unique to Urbana and Springfield, but reflected larger on things that the entire country was experiencing. So she asked me if I would be willing to do some, research if she needed it on some of the local stuff, and stay in touch with her about developments that were going on locally. And so we ended up forming kind of a professional and personal friendship over the next couple of years while she was working on her most recent book, Paper Girl. So, but yeah, she's had an incredible career, and now she's announced that she's running for Congress, and I wish her well. And I think she'd make a wonderful congressperson, and I really hope she's in Virginia, and I hope that goes very well for her. But she's an amazing person and an outstanding journalist, and she's just done some incredible things, eye-opening stories, just heart-wrenching stories that have really, I think, opened people's eyes to a lot of the problems that exist not only in smaller communities like Urbana and Springfield, but all of the country. So,
yeah, absolutely. I always think Springfield, we keep talking about Springfield. We're going to talk about Springfield or even Urbana or these local towns, especially here kind of in the Rust Belt. But it's a microcosm, but it's just it's a representation of what's going on.
Oh yeah,
everywhere.
Absolutely. It's a little microcosm for everything else.
Absolutely. And so you had your background in journalism, and you did some radio work, and then you came in, or out of retirement, we should say, to work at the Springfield News and Sun. And something that I wanted to address, because you discussed this, if you're comfortable with it, was, and we're going to get into what you did while you were there, but I know you also struggled with, while you were there were issues with equitable pay regarding labor, because that's going to affect the quality or the availability or just the overall health of local news is, are we able to pay our journalists? So I didn't know if you wanted to speak on that a little bit.
Well, I was when I was working there, I was a freelancer, so I was not on staff because, as we were talking about, the staffs have shrunk. They're almost non-existent now. Springfield News Sun, when I was working as a freelancer there, and they're advertising now for freelancers again. When I was there were I think probably maybe 4 full-time employees that were strictly Springfield News Sun. They're jointly owned by Cox Media, which also owns the newspaper. Although Cox Media still has a role with them, but they're just Cox Media there's a larger corporation now that actually owns the newspapers, and Cox Media is just I think, like maybe a board member access kind of to it. But at any rate, they've had the kind of downsizing that everybody else has seen, and they rely primarily, I think not primarily, but they rely a lot on freelancers to cover the local news. And so you don't get the benefits. And as a retiree, I didn't need the benefits, but you don't get a whole lot of money. I would be covering things, but I would be paid $50 a story. And that might mean for some stories I would be doing research for 2 days, interviews for 2 days before I actually even got to the point of writing the story. So you're not getting much per hour. And you're not going to make a living on it if you're really trying to. So it was fine for somebody that's retired, but, and it's not not something you're going to get the quality of coverage and the quality of reporting that you'd really want to have on your local community.
Yeah. I mean, that puts it in perspective right there. $50 for one story, but the amount of time and effort that you need to put in. So and then people, just kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, people are just going to either, the quality's not going to be there. They're not going to put as much effort if they're only going to get $50. That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, that might vary elsewhere. There might be other places paying more. And I would imagine, like some of the internet places, the internet sites might be paying more. I don't know. But most of them rely on freelance too. They're not employing full-time people most of the time. They're doing independent contracting. So it's as a journalist right now, it's a really difficult time to try and make a living.
And we need journalists more than ever now.
Yes, absolutely we do. I mean, that is a huge part of the problems that we're facing, I think, is that we don't have the kind of journalism we used to have.
What do you think is needed to bring people back into journalism?
Well, I think I would like to see, this is kind of like off topic in a way, but I still think it's a valuable consideration. I think that we need to bring back the fairness doctrine, that journalism to a great degree is now very agenda-driven, very politically driven, not for all newspapers or all TV stations, but for the vast majority of what you get is politically and agenda-driven. And so that I think we need to go back to the fairness doctrine and require journalists to adhere to, the precepts of fairness and balanced reporting. I think those are things that were valuable and really help protect democracy. And it's unfortunate that we ever veered away from those. And I think that there was an effort at one point in time to make it was difficult for corporations to own, all of the stations in a given area, and then now major corporations own all the stations in states. It's like it's monopolies by corporations that also have their own agendas and political leanings. And so I think that's one of the areas where we need to have some congressional action to break up those kind of monopolies that exist. And I think that both of those things would help perhaps enable a better and more robust journalism to develop again. There's some organizations that are looking at nonprofit kind of approaches to it, and that may hold some promise for more balanced journalism going forward. I'm hoping that will come to fruition. And there are still some statewide organizations like Ohio Capital Journal is a very valuable resource for people in Ohio to get information that's essential to knowing what's going on in the state. But again, it's primarily, I think, probably independent contractors that are doing a lot of the work, and a lot of them are based in more urban areas, and it's hard to get really localized, community-based information shared. Because those kind of outlets just don't exist anymore. I mean, there used to even be like little community weekly papers that would cover the village council meeting and give you the rundown on what the mayor's court did and all that kind of stuff. And even those have gone by the wayside in a lot of places. So all of that information is just now not accessible to people easily. They really have to search it out, and a lot of people again just don't take the interest to do it.
A thought that comes to mind is like, excuse me, that we believe that our voting is our right, and like we really need to focus on our local elections. But how can a town really focus on their local elections when it's not being like publicized, when they don't have their local news? So it's almost like, I don't know. Is it like intentionally done then?
You do have to wonder, don't you?
Yeah.
You do. I mean, I look at what's going on with education. And, for example, in Ohio, I mean, there's been a constant attack on education that's been underway for over a decade now, where they are now defunding schools and funding only private schools, primarily. Most of the tax money is now going to private schools in Ohio.
Don't even get me started.
I know. But is that deliberate? Yes. So is it deliberate that they're also decimating people getting access to important information for democracy? Yes, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And I think that, all of it, it's a long-term plan. I think it's been underway for a long time, and I think it's going to take a long time and a lot of effort to recover from a lot of the damage that they've already done.
Yeah, and we saw the same thing happen in Florida. It's like,
oh yeah, it's national again, microcosm. Yeah. It's every little community is experiencing a lot of these same things all across the country.
Exactly. Well, that leads us into the big kind of heavy topic, which is what is going on right now. And since you were there when it started at its height, and now it's kind of reaching, I'd say, a height again. But I know you've attended these meetings, these local town hall meetings regarding what was going on here in Springfield. And right now, it's all over the national news right now. We don't know what's going to happen. But I was hoping you could kind of walk us back to a little bit of the beginning while you were working and reporting, and just some of your observations.
Yeah, there's a lot to really talk about there too.
Yeah.
It started out, of course, with the auto accident in which the young boy was killed, and it happened in August of 2023, and it was the first day of school, even more tragically, and the boy named Dayton Clark was on a school bus to his first day of classes, and another driver was driving into the sun, he said, and couldn't see. And at that time of morning, and he ended up crossing over into the oncoming lane. The bus driver tried to avoid him, and in the process of doing so, they still hit, and the bus overturned, and Aiden was killed when he was ejected from the bus. So the driver of the other vehicle was Haitian, and that's when things really started to get underway in Springfield with a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment, with a lot of exploitation of that accident by people to say, make all kinds of allegations about what Haitians were doing here and how they were destroying the fabric of the community, and they had no business being here, and they couldn't speak English, and they couldn't drive cars, and they were destroying the community, essentially. They were taking the jobs, they were taking the houses, they were taking all kinds of money from the government, which I always thought, well, wait a minute, if they're getting money from the government, then why do they have to work? Because people were saying, they're getting all this free money from the government. And it's like, this doesn't make sense because the overwhelming number of them seem to have jobs. But that's the other thing that's kind of still never been really fully addressed. And it was raised by some of the folks who were part of the problem, I think, was some of the same folks who were leveling allegations that, the city was getting money for these people coming here, and that's why they were not doing anything. Some of those people were raising some questions, but nobody ever has really addressed exactly who is responsible for bringing Haitians here. How did that happen in the first place? I, at one point, as a reporter, took to the newspaper some information about someone in the community that was employing a great number of Haitians and had been for quite some time, expanded their workforce, in fact, to hire more Haitians. And because the person had a lot of political connections, the newspaper didn't show any inclination to pursue that at all. And I don't think there's ever been really a strong effort to unveil some of that information that does exist out there. But at the same time, a lot of the people who were virulently anti-immigrant were using all of the traditional racial tropes and allegations and, just anything and everything that you have ever imagined being said about other human beings to dehumanize them was being said in the city commission meetings about the Haitians that had come to Springfield. And over time, that ended up getting some pushback from other community members who did not like seeing the obvious racism and kind of things, the whole kind of negative images that were being spread, and
Just
lies.
Discourse.
Lies that were being spread. So
as a fellow person from here, it was kind of when my family started spending more time here because just of the situation, it ended up being that I decided to move back here. And it was just interesting, as somebody that has been living in Florida for a long time, we have a lot of different immigrant populations there. And I'm aware there's a strong Haitian community in South Florida. And so for me, it just seemed kind of like a simple, maybe there's more work here. I don't want to say, we noticed it, obviously, but it didn't seem out of the ordinary for me. So, or like even my parents. And, so it was surprising to hear this, just such an intense reaction. And so some of it you wonder is, not you wonder, but you think some of it is the predisposition of the community and their ability and just kind of what they've experienced. We have a lot of people here they've never been anywhere else. I hate to say that, but they're not outside of their own culture very aware of others. For a lack of a better term, that's the reality.
Absolutely true. And the last time we had a significant influx of workers from another country had been probably 20 years ago, when there were a lot of Latinos who came into the community. And that was met with a lot of opposition too, because as you say, it's not a community that welcomes people with open arms. It's a very kind of insulated community.
Yes. It's very insular, but this is probably we have a clip to play of City Council of just kind of showing the building tension, how much animosity was building, essentially. And so we're going to go ahead and play that. And I do think that this music is a bit dramatizing, but thus is media. A whole nother, going back to the whole issue we talked about. So
Thank you. Take care. Yeah. Peace. Due to the heightened security measures, we ask that members of the audience not approach the dais. Our community has entered into some unprecedented challenging times as we've been thrusted into the national spotlight. They're eating the cats. We're going to go into our comment period. You'll have 3 minutes again.
All right. Yeah, my name is Bill Monaghan, and we've been wondering, a lot of us, why traffic laws aren't being enforced for migrant residents of the area.
Today, Mr. Mayor, we lost one of ours in a tragic accident. He wasn't at fault, but as a community, we deal with it.
Right down where I work, I've seen 4 accidents in 1 week. And nobody charged with anything.
Why are you being so angry?
One student is dead, more than 20 others are hurt.
Every time a citizen got up here and had a concern, oh no, pushback, that's racist.
And those who spread hate and unsubstantiated lies need to understand the stain on your soul, your morals, and your humanity, like, period.
Hey, please, I'm going to have to ask you to leave if you disrupt.
You need to implement more programs to help us as immigrants.
Why don't these people go home and fight for their own countries they seem so proud of? You know, instead of coming over here crying and getting a bunch of free shit.
Filled workforce need,
A bunch of chaos.
highly educated and
The
skilled,
next Detroit.
and talented people,
Off my tax dollars.
and they have reversed the downward population spiral
The
of
citizens
our
that were
city and
born
county.
here, we become second class.
Pause it there.
That was so interesting to hear the first time when we played it, because it did go back and forth about pros and cons. And then one of the lines there where somebody would it sound like it was pro immigrants coming to the community is that they reversed the downward spiral of the population. Vicky, can you explain a little bit on that? Do you know about that?
Yeah, we had a major, one of the major employers, the major employer in the community for decades, maybe a century, I don't know. International Harvester, which was originally a manufacturer of farm equipment and then a major manufacturer of trucks, was a huge employer in the community. And then we lost, the company moved most of those jobs to Indiana. And when that happened, a huge number of people lost their jobs in the community. And with those jobs, they lost outstanding benefits and pay because it was a union shop. And then, so we have not had that kind of employer in town for probably 3 decades now. So a lot of people left. I mean, they couldn't, it's been we don't have the tax base that we once had, and so we don't have the amenities that we once had. We don't have there's a lot of people who just left because they wanted something better and they wanted more opportunity, and Springfield wasn't offering it anymore. And so the people that stayed, we had our experience with the opiate epidemic the same way a lot of other communities did, and that was piled on top of the increasing unemployment or underemployment that existed. So I think all of that is a contributing factor to the anger. I mean, the Rust Belt anger is a real thing, and it does have legitimacy. And I don't ever mean to suggest that it doesn't. It does have real legitimacy. A lot of people have experienced that in the Midwest, but that itself doesn't justify, it doesn't justify the bitterness and anger toward people who came here for a better life from Haiti or anywhere else. Mm-hmm. They came here, and a lot of them started small businesses. They also, restaurants and that kind of thing, but they also went to work for companies who had problems finding reliable workers who would show up, because there were drug and alcohol problems in the community, and there were certainly some new businesses that found, that they wanted more reliable workers, and when they could get them in by means of some of the new people that came to the community, they took advantage of that opportunity.
Vicky, you bring up a good point, and I think that's what the guy in the video is speaking to is when population and working at businesses. There have been multiple businesses that have come out, from my understanding, and I've read different news articles, that they can't keep workers. And that's I feel like it's a missing point that everybody kind of glosses over here, more or less.
And that
frustrates
goes
me.
absolutely. And then and part of that also is the people who are so angry blame liberals when in reality these people came for jobs that are being offered by companies that probably are more conservative in their
Yeah.
politics.
And I was just going to add, there's been multiple, I know there's been one or two who've come out, these people that own these large factories or businesses that have employed immigrants, and they've said, we can't keep anybody else. And then they've now gotten death threats.
Right. Yes. They were, yeah, there was a lot of, in that period of time where the things were at the height, right before they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs rhetoric took viral coverage. Then the Nazis were here and those kind of things were going on. I think that all of that was building over time to then be exploited by people who were taking advantage of it for political purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And to go back to answer your question a little further, Dahlia, me as a millennial, I feel like I grew up in a time where it was a very common sentiment, which I think goes hand in hand with what you said, Vicky, about International Harvester and people leaving. And even my parents say, because they're both born and raised here as well, and then moved away in early 2000s more or less, but have been coming back. And they told me since the 90s it's been kind of changing really for them, and maybe even before. But I just remember personally, the people around me, very, very few people wanted to stay here that were my age. And that's another point I often, especially here in Springfield specifically, a lot of the people, it's like, I want to get out and I want to move to Columbus, even Dayton. I think another question I often have is we lose a lot of people that go off to college because they don't come back.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's been another huge indicator, I think, of something else going on, as well as, and to speak to population loss, Dahlia, I think almost every school district in this county has resized their schools because it's the population has shrunk so much, to give you like a good visual. Yeah, so there were 2 city schools. We used to have 2 very large schools that made up the city, and now that's been condensed down to 1 high school. And then most areas in the surrounding county area, most of those schools have taken the high school and maybe the middle school and the elementary, or more or less, and they put them all on one campus, versus it used to be maybe a couple middle schools, a few elementaries, the high school, and so now sometimes they're even housed together, like a middle school and a high school. That's how significant the population loss has been here.
And so essentially with that, what I took away from that part of the clip was, immigrants are coming to these towns that have a lower population, where they're bringing their talents, they're supporting the economic system of these towns, and it seems like a plus to me.
Yeah. I would agree. And then the other thing is, I think we have to also recognize that one of the reasons that the Haitians qualified for temporary protected status is because Haiti has become so lawless. And we, as a country, bear some responsibility for that, because we've been selling them all the guns. We've been selling them all the weapons that they're using to terrorize people with. And we continue to do so. So sending these people who have established livelihoods and family connections here and a real basis for their lives back to Haiti is just tragic.
Yeah, it's unconscionable, in my opinion. Yeah, Dahlia, to your point, these are things that people really breeze over and nobody talks about, which is why I would like to bring them up. I'm glad we are discussing them right now. Because nobody will talk about the severe population loss, the severe, when my sister moved her family back here from Florida in, gosh, I don't know. It's been a while. And I remember at the time, even some of my family who were from here but don't live here anymore, they live in other states, they were nervous for them because it was so rampant, the news on just drug use and people overdosing and finding them in the middle of the street in their car. You know, that was like a real concern there for a while. This was prior to everything going on. So when you think of working and or available people available to work, you know, you have to go further back and understand what's been going on. So
Right.
And again, it's a microcosm of a whole lot of U.S. communities over the last 30 years.
Absolutely. Vicky, you brought up a great point that, you know, and some of these people, I just want to say that we heard in the clip, were rooted in some pretty anti-Haitian immigrant sentiment outside of these town halls or in groups or in other ways. The one guy who says we're second-class citizens, I see him all over Facebook posting all the time. I didn't recognize him until today when I pulled up that clip. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know who that person is. But these people have been and are, you know, just kind of really spewing, feels like as much as they can.
Well, and some of them have really tried to establish influencer status. I mean, that's they've been very, very consciously trying to establish influencer ability and recognition throughout this process as well.
And the one guy who gets on to speak at the end is who, if anyone listened to the Beth Macy episode or is cued into the Paper Girl, that was her ex who kind of started this. He started, what I understood, an anti-Haitian coalition, and he was all over the conservative news talk outlets and kind of really circuiting, and you can look him up on YouTube by his name, and there's all kinds of videos where he invites people to come and do his expose on what's going on here. And she details what happened in that book as well, but yeah, it's very documented. And I didn't realize that there were neo-Nazis here until recently. I mean, not as far as a directed group that was trying to impose their will basically on the community in that sense. I did not know that.
Yeah, that was pretty shocking. The first time they appeared was Springfield has an annual open free concert, the Blues and Jazz Festival, and the first time they appeared there was in August of 2024. They marched around the area where the concert was held to be, you know, get visibility and frighten people. And then they turned up later at the city commission meeting and addressed the commission. And that was one of the things that the commission had to do after that was they implemented new rules to say, you know, you have to be from the community, you have to be willing to share an address that can prove that you're from the community, and we have to have your name before you address the commission, because, you know, there were outsiders that were Nazis coming in and wanting to have time speaking, and we did not need them here talking in our community, but that was kind of an indicator of things that we're also seeing in a different kind of context now, where, you know, watching things happen that we never could have imagined would happen in the streets of the United States.
Absolutely.
I mean, talking about outsiders coming in.
Yes.
Allie was telling me earlier this week about, actually just like a few days ago, about this particular, like these influencers that are coming, that are in Springfield with the idea of like following ICE and like, I don't know, Allie, you take it from here. Like explain a little bit about what's going on. And
I think what has happened in Minneapolis gained a momentous, what's the word I'm looking for? Overall, like adrenaline in the people that I don't think would quite sparked yet, even though I know there's been a lot going on in other cities. But I think for obvious reasons, you know, Minneapolis has really just, like I said, sparked a lot of just a lot of people to come. A lot of people are aware. A lot of people really know what's going on right now. And it's obviously, we feel like outside of here, everything has reached its height. And so from what I can gather, I'm sure there's been a lot of influencers or people I haven't paid attention much to necessarily people on TikTok either, but they have been going and reporting in Minneapolis. And then with this whole TPS ending and the rumors, the word was that everybody from Minneapolis was going to come here from the Department of Homeland Security, these ICE agents, just these crews of people, and it was going to be mass mayhem. It's kind of how it felt here, more or less. I think these people decided to kind of begin to direct their attention here because everybody wants to follow the story, right? And part of it is also the clicks and the views, but the story could be here. That's not wrong. From my understanding, and because, I've been involved a little bit in local organizing around here as much as I could, there was a flyer shared originally, I think, by the Ohio Immigrant Alliance. So nothing to do with a specific to Springfield organization, but it asked people to stay away pretty much. And I can't figure out if it seems like nobody will claim that they made this flyer, which is a little bizarre, but it got shared across social media. I can't understand why, maybe local organization and efforts don't want people just encroaching upon Springfield en masse and kind of causing hysteria. It's not a large place. It's not Minneapolis, and it doesn't have, my understanding, it's also we do have a lot of people that support ICE here as well. We don't, it's not Minneapolis where you're going to find just droves of people in the street. And so that seemed to really trigger, more or less, for lack of a better term, it seemed to trigger people thinking that Springfield doesn't want any help, which has more or less devolved into some of the most atrocious allegations I've yet seen around here for some of the local organizations helping or who've been helping, which is ironic because there are these hate groups and these people who have been so vocal online about wanting Haitians out of here and have drawn the attention that we have. This is now I'm getting into my own personal opinion, but I'm these people have been on the news and they've been out there, and what's been going on here forever is not a secret. And so it's interesting that right now what we're seeing is there's these news influencers, self described news influencers coming, and they are claiming that there is child trafficking going on. They're claiming, I keep hearing the word dark money. The governor, Mike DeWine, who's a Republican, I don't know. It's getting really bizarre. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. And my question is, I just don't know why anybody doesn't want to talk about the people here who've really brought the heat on Springfield, so to speak. It feels a lot like what, if anybody's aware, what the also self-described influencer Nick Shirley, who reported on the Somali immigrants in Minneapolis, and kind of brought all the attention onto Minneapolis and the Somali community. I'm I don't know if I think this is any different right now, even though, he's right-wing and these people are left-wing, and, so it's a mess. That's what I'll say.
I think you can never rule out the possibility of just outside agitators exploiting the opportunity to drive more animosity and anger.
Yeah, that's exactly how it feels. You keep seeing things on the news. Springfield's just this awful, horrible place, but we've seen lovely people come out and support. And I've been personally, as someone who hadn't lived here in a long time, and I was very worried. I am surprised to see how many people have come out and support. And so I know you mentioned that in the bus accident, which was really used as a tool, a weapon, that family's parents did come out and say they do not want people using essentially their son's death to take a stance against immigrants. And I wanted to play that for us here real quick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. They have spoken my son's name and used his death for political gain. This needs to stop now. They can vomit all the hate they want about illegal immigrants, the border crisis, and even untrue claims about fluffy pets being ravaged and eaten by community members. However, they are not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed to mention Aiden Clark from Springfield, Ohio. I will listen to them one more time to hear their apologies. To clear the air, my son, Aiden Clark, was not murdered. He was accidentally killed by an immigrant from Haiti. This tragedy is felt all over this community, the state, and even the nation. But don't spin this towards hate. In order to live like Aiden, you need to accept everyone, choose to shine, make the difference, lead the way, and be the inspiration. I said to Aiden that I would try to make a difference in his honor. This is it. Live like Aiden. Thank you.
I think those are some really powerful words. I just got like goosebumps and like hearing that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and he delivered that message at the Springfield City Commission meeting, and it had probably only been a couple of weeks after his son had died in that accident, and it was one of the most moving things I've ever heard.
Like the thought that just keeps kind of going in my head is like we talk about the outsiders coming in and speaking about local issues, like another reason why it's so important to have local coverage, have local voices speak from different perspectives, because when you have these outsiders, they just spin it in whatever political gain or whatever agenda that they may have, and not actually get to the root of it.
Exactly. They don't have a vested interest in encouraging community coherence. Mm-hmm. Their whole vested interest is in driving the dynamic of division.
I think sometimes there's almost a sentiment like, oh, it's this little town, there's no way they can take care of themselves, or there's no way they can handle this. And it almost starts to, I wonder if it's like we said, a classist issue, an issue of classism, and small town America being able to have their own resilience and have their own resistance.
And I think that what we are discovering about Springfield is that we have incredible leaders that are able to pull people together and resist the outside influence that may be driving a narrative that is mostly destructive to our community. And I have been really heartened by the number of people that have come together as part of that and have said, no, you're not going to do this to our community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
I think that's a good point to kind of pause our moment on what's going on right now. Again, we don't know. It's still so much in play. TPS could be ended next week, and we might be at the same spot if it goes to the Supreme Court. So we'll be staying posted. Vicky, one of our goals when we got into this was not relishing in despair, but kind of rising and finding your moment of resilience, I should say, or keeping yourself grounded even. And so we ask every guest, what's something that helps you get through these moments?
I think everybody who should maintain connections in the community and maintain an interest in community. Wherever you live, there are people facing challenges. There are people who need support in a variety of ways. And any one of us can find ourselves in that position at some point in time or another. And it's really important to be there for each other. And I think that's what's going on now in Springfield. And I'm really heartened, again, as I said, to see that happening. Friendships and family. Mm-hmm. That's always the most important thing, I think, for everybody, and as well it should be. And I think a lot of people are making more of an effort sometimes now to not allow family and friendships to fracture. They're trying to find ways to that we can find things we agree on. And I think that that's an invaluable thing for people to be doing these days. There's nothing more important than trying to maintain those relationships that are so fundamental to all of our well-being.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think that that's exactly where a theme that we've heard over and over again with a lot of our guests is the connection and community. Like, we can't say it enough of how important it is.
Absolutely, it is. It's it's the source of your humanity in many ways, and is essential to the well-being of everybody around you.
Well, thank you, Vicky. Thank you so much for your time and for the work that you do. And, I don't usually think of like local journalism, honestly, in the sense of, I guess I'm just so caught up, as maybe many of us are, with the news and quick news and changing news. And I feel like this conversation with you has really been time to take a step back and really value what my neighbors have to say, value what quality journalism is and how important it is to democracy. So thank you for that reminder and for that pause.
Thank you for taking that message, because I really do think it's essential. It's so important.
Support
And
local
Allie,
journalism.
Yes, support local journalism. Please support local journalism in every way you can. And we are responsible for democracy, and we have to make sure that we participate and that we do our research and that we find ways to share a sense of reality. So stay away from all that misinformation that's out there.
Yeah, and it's so hard. Yeah. It's so hard to stay because it's constantly out there everywhere all the time. But
I was going to say, and to add to the support local journalism, be wary of these new wave of people who come into the community that don't have a connection to the community, because ultimately the clicks, the engagement, that is what gets them paid. It's not to say everybody's disingenuous, but this has for me even been really eye-opening. So it's just a good reminder.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you both. I appreciate you, and I celebrate your show. I think you're doing a great job with
thank you.
with letting people learn a lot, and I like that idea.
Well, we're here learning, just as much as our listeners are. So
thank you. Yeah, we take that as a high compliment from a former radio reporter and journalist.
Yes. I love podcasts because it is like old radio. It is, and I think it's brilliant that you guys are doing it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.